Hello, in this video we are going to cover the difference between all of these terms: bash, shell, command line, terminal, console. There'll be other terms as well that basically get interchanged. They're used, some people might say bash, some people might say terminal, and there are there are some distinctions between them. First of all, bash and shell are very similar, so you can consider them almost the same. They aren't the same thing, but they're very similar. Then obviously we have command line, we have terminal, and we have shell, and we also have a console as well. So what is the bash shell? So the shell, it's basically a program. So it's a program that provides the traditional text-only user interface for Linux and other Unix-like operating systems such as Mac. So it's a program for the text-only interface. And what's interesting is if terminal is basically a terminal window, which is essentially a terminal emulator, and this is also only text only. It's a text only window inside of a graphical user interface that emulates a console. So a lot of the confusion will lie in sort of these two areas. So a terminal will be a window where you can type in commands on your computer. Then the bash shell is sort of behind the scenes what is happening, because you can have different ones. So this is where the difference comes in. Bash is one type, shell is another. You can get off in the ZSH, and there's like a bunch of others as well, and those would do things slightly differently, have slightly different features. So terminal is what allows you to interact with some sort of bash or shell. So what is the command line then? So the command line is a space to it's like, what's the best way to describe the command line realistically? Because command line a lot of the time will be interchanged with the terminal for the most part, because basically anything you can input commands into is the command line. Anything that takes input. But you could actually have a command line in a game. For example, on PC games, if you press the tilde key, which is by the number 1, that sometimes activates a built-in command line. That's not the terminal. It looks very similar to the terminal, and it's not using a bash shell system. It is actually a command line. So what that basically means is it allows you to put text input and you'll initiate some sort of command. That command line could initiate a bash command, or it could be just a built-in command in a specific application. So command line will look similar to terminal and bash, shell, ZSH, but it technically is different. It's just anywhere where you can put text input. So you could implement a command line in your website, for example. Okay, so that's what the command line is. So what is the shell? So the shell is a program that provides the traditional text-only user interface for Linux and Unix-based. Remember, already covered it right here. Sorry about that. Okay, and then what is console? So the console again is another thing that will get sort of swapped between these in terms of the terminology. The console is an instrument panel that contains the controls for a computer. So this is a physical, actual input system. Back in the days, you used to have a console that on the screen, if you had a screen, had a sort of a terminal command-like interface, and you would be physically inputting it. And even though you have a keyboard now, that goes to your operating system first, which then either puts it to the command line or a terminal-based system. So this is a physical instrument panel that has controls. So that's the difference between the bash, shell, terminal, command line, and console. I just wanted to cover this in a separate video so there's no confusion when you hear this terminology, because they are technically different things. You might, people might say, put this into the console, and I use that terminology myself, but what you'll probably, what they'll probably be meaning is put it into the terminal, into something like bash or shell, which is obviously also a command line, so it can get a bit confusing. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to pop me a message, and as usual, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.